be ready to go. How you been?
Good, man.
Good.
Still working from home, living that home life. And,
Oh yeah. Yep, these walls don't change much. I see them all the time.
No. Son's getting ready to graduate from Will. Will.
Yeah.
You've talked to him on Alex's streams. Yeah, he's finished. He finished his high school in January.
Good Lord. That's crazy.
So yeah. All the things.
Well, good for him, number one.
Right.
And congrats to you for having a kid graduate. That's always good.
Right. now we get those college bills.
Yeah. That's where the real fun begins.
Right.
Let's see. You're sounding good, looking good, so everything's fine there as long as my internet doesn't take a dump again.
Okay. Have y'all been having internet issues?
I was streaming Batman Arkham City yesterday, and it dumped on me twice. And then right after I started up doing Forza today, it did it. But the weird thing was the game never stopped. But the Discord took a dump and my stream did. But then it came back up a minute later. So if for some reason I go out, I'll be back. It'll just take it a second. But it's been pretty steady since then, so I'm hoping.
Okay.
Well, Nisbet,
hopefully we have no problems.
Yeah,
hey,
I'm hoping not.
It is what it is.
Nisbet, you got to wait a couple minutes till we start the show. And then you'll find out who hasn't seen this movie yet. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. I got my notes ready, and you can hear this.
That is like drinking sweaty butter.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool deal.
Sweaty butter.
So there's a YouTube account, How to Drink, and I watch his stuff all the time. And one of them, he said that, and I was just like, I have to capture that. Like I have to go back and find. There was that one, and then he also in the same episode later on said
a palace for you to poop in,
and that was another one I just had to capture. I don't know why. It was too goofy not to.
Yeah, no, those are great.
A palace for you to poop in.
Palace to poop in.
All right. Well, if you're ready, I'm ready. We got we talk about Sam Raimi, and boy, this movie had some stuff going on. All right. In that case, then we're ready to roll. We are going to get started in 3, 2, 1.
I'm confused. All I hear from you spineless cowards, is how poor you are. How you can't afford my taxes, my protection. And yet somehow, you've all managed to find the money to hire a professional gunfighter to kill me. Okay, right on now.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies, and specifically, we talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, a.k.a. TV's Travis, and this is episode number 193. The movie this week that we watched is The Quick and the Dead from 1995, and joining me to talk about it, because he had never seen it before, from the Joystick and Mouse podcast, it's JayDimes. How you doing?
What's going on?
It's been a while since you've been on. I was looking back over, the guest list, and I realized it had been almost 2 years since you were on. It was.
Did we do the Contender?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And that was January of 2020, and I'm like, I got to get JayDimes back on here. It's been too long.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And so you had never seen The Quick and the Dead before. Were you familiar with it much?
No.
Okay.
No, when I looked it up, the kind of like the little poster picture thing that they give sounded familiar, and I think maybe I remember somebody referring to it as a Sharon Stone movie at one point. And so I kind of remembered it, but yeah, it had never been largely on my radar. I was very surprised at the number of people that were in the movie.
Yeah, we definitely are going to get to this cast because it's amazing. This did come out in 1995. It's directed by Sam Raimi, written by Simon Moore. And it came out right in the middle of kind of a mini renaissance of Westerns. We hadn't had a ton of Westerns for a while. There was a couple here and there, Silverado in the 80s, stuff like that. Three Amigos I would count as a Western, comedy, but it's a Western. Mm-hmm. But Unforgiven came out, and that kind of, because it won so many awards and it was such a well-received movie, it sort of gave a little life to Westerns for a couple years, and we ended up getting Tombstone, Wyatt Earp, and this movie, and there was one or two other smaller ones. There was also the Young Guns right around that same time. Young Guns 2. And so this one is,
I have to throw my favorite Western in there also. Posse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the fact that this one is lesser known kind of makes sense. It's not Tombstone. It's not Wyatt Earp, and it's not Unforgiven. It's not quite a out and out comedy, but it's also a little, it's hard to call it lighter because it's definitely gunfights and a lot. The body count's like 18 in the movie, so it's not like it's a small, but but
there's more humor in it.
Yeah, it's a lighter tone than something like Unforgiven or even Tombstone. But the cast is outstanding. You mentioned Sharon Stone right off the bat, and this is one of my favorite Sharon Stone roles. For me. Now, a lot of people like to point to Basic Instinct as a big role for her, and it was. It's weird. I don't have like a thing where I just love Sharon Stone in movies, but when she pops up in something, I remember her in Sphere, which that movie isn't great, but she was actually pretty good in it, I thought.
My favorite Sharon Stone movie is The Specialist, which I think is like a great combination of her being a likable character and them not really asking her to do too much.
That's a very good one. She was great in Casino, which came out the same year as this. Yeah. But like I never got into Sliver was one of hers that it wasn't really
never
on my
saw
radar. I saw Basic Instinct, but again, it's not really like it's not a movie that I go to. It's just it has memorable moments, but one in particular, yeah, okay. But there's something.
Sliver has one of the Baldwin brothers in it, right?
It's Billy, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. The thing with this, you mentioned likable, and it's interesting because she's not asked to do too much in this script. No one really is asked to do too much, which I kind of like. It's got a pretty good ensemble thing going on. In fact, I would kind of go so far as to say like I want more out of a lot of them. But it's weird because they try to make her a sympathetic character, but at the same time, she's a little bit unlikable in this character of the lady, or as we find out later, Ellen, which brings me to a point that was kind of odd. But she's teetering on being unlikable with the way she acts towards the young girl who's kind of fangirling over her. Mm-hmm. The way that she kind of tries to brush off Court quite a bit after finding out that he rode with Herod, Gene Hackman's character. So she borders on being unlikable, but she's got enough charisma and they do just enough to, plus with how sympathetic her backstory is, it does help to kind of bring her back up. But I thought that she was really great. And Ace in the chat mentions her coat belongs in a museum because that was a legitimate Old West leather jacket that was like 100 years old when they made the movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that thing looked like it weighed about 85 pounds. I can't imagine that was easy to wear, but it looked great. She pulled off this role really well. I will say that. She never became too much of the vengeful, I don't know, I never strayed too far from sort of who she was when she started the movie, if that makes sense. And I liked it. I thought that she was good.
I really appreciated the twist at the end.
Yes.
I didn't see that coming at all.
No. In fact, some trivia that I looked over said that the original ending wasn't quite gelling, and so they brought in, and supposedly it was Joss Whedon came in and did a quick rewrite at the end. I don't know what he rewrote. It's hard to say, but I feel like I'm with you. I did not expect that the first time that I saw the movie, and even if I don't watch it for a while, like I kind of forgot about that part until that scene started up in that last flashback, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. I mean, now that you say that about Whedon working on it, there are parts that I could see are Whedon-esque in the way that he handles Lady.
Yeah. Whose name is Ellen, although only one person ever uses it. And it's not the person you would think it would be, which is the doctor. Because the old man doctor never refers to her by name. It's only Court who does, which we never got a scene where she told him her name was Ellen. In fact, there was a deleted sex scene that they shot with Court and Ellen that they cut out of the movie because it didn't really fit. And I'm assuming somewhere in there is when they had it, but it's like, okay, I get it. It doesn't fit like this. It doesn't belong in this movie. There's
he's already fallen down as a preacher. Like they didn't need to give him a sex scene.
No, and it just doesn't fit. Like their relationship isn't really romantic either.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I thought that was funny when he starts calling her Ellen, and I always forget that, and I'm like, wait a minute, when did he learn her name? We missed that scene, but Court, who's played by Russell Crowe, and it's funny because I did not plan to do Russell Crowe movies back to back, but I did Gladiator last week, and now this movie this week, and
such a great movie.
Yeah, and this was Russell Crowe's first American film. He had done all he had done so far had been Australian TV series, and he really made a name for himself in an Australian film called Romper Stomper in 1992.
Yes, I've seen that,
and so that was kind of his breakout role in terms of getting any notoriety and noticed. And then this was his first American movie, and number one, I think his accent was fine. He definitely didn't sound like an Aussie doing an American accent. It wasn't really a Texas accent, but he sounded American, so I was fine with that. And I thought he was good too, playing that part. It's one of those. It's another one though. This is going to become a theme for this episode for me. I want more. I want like more of the story of these people. Because Court, I thought, was again an intriguing character. He's a former outlaw who gave all that up to become a preacher and starts a mission somewhere that they drag him out of and bring him back to this, and he wants nothing to do with the killing, and is forced into it, and eventually breaks down and does it, and a really great scene. And then he's all in and kind of ending it, tossing the marshal badge to him and sort of being like, the law is back in town. I liked that. That was a very, very nice, like, Hollywood Western ending.
I thought that scene was funny because I was just thinking, like, she can't just make somebody a marshal. like it's not even a sheriff's badge. Like he's a U.S. Marshal. Like he's a federal. You can't. Yeah, I thought it was funny that that's like the last shot, but I was like, that doesn't hold up.
It doesn't hold up once anybody of any authority shows up in town. Although,
right, yeah.
Given what happens throughout this movie, I don't think the authorities really care about this town because there is clearly an escaped convict in that town, and we didn't see a single Pinkerton or anybody at all.
Nobody was coming to look for him.
Which that was great. I want to get to him. That was Mark Boone Jr. that played Scars. And
so I'm a huge Sons of Anarchy fan.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember Mark Boone Jr. from Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah.
And I watched this whole movie trying to find somebody's face that looked like him, and I never saw it. And I was like, who is he?
This is a younger him, and without hair. That's the thing that throws you, right? Because
Much slimmer.
He's slimmer. He's got his head shaved, and he barely has a beard. Right?
Yeah.
I'm so used to
Yeah.
seeing Mark Boone Jr. looking like me with like a big old beard and long hair. You know, I remember him. That was what he looked like in Batman Begins.
Yep.
And even like Memento, he had that kind of longer hair going on. He was more clean shaven, but he still looked like Mark Boone Jr. And he's just one of those great character actors that when he pops up in something, he just dives into it. And this was great because he got the prosthetic and he had like the one blind eye and the scars over his face. But again, another character, it's like we got a page out of his book. He's escaped Khan, and that's all we know. Yep. And obviously he was probably imprisoned for killing someone. But that's it. We don't know, because he said he was sentenced to 35 years. He left after 3 days, and nobody came looking for him, which was the thing. I was like, really? No one, nothing at all.
No one.
And he smells bad. That's the other thing we know. He smells really bad. But it's one of those, like, it's great to get these character actors. That we had Tobin Bell playing Dog Kelly is his character's name. He's in essentially 2 scenes. He's right at the beginning of the movie where he's digging for his treasure, whatever it is he's looking for.
Yeah.
And then shoots at Sharon Stone's character as she rides up, but ends up getting the crap kicked out of him and chained to a wagon wheel. And when he shows up in town with the wagon wheel still, like the part of it. But that was Tobin Bell. That's Jigsaw. And I didn't recognize, I saw his name pop up, and then I didn't recognize him at first. Because again, you know, it's almost 30 years ago. He's a lot younger, but he didn't have that voice thing going on. His voice wasn't super deep. Right. And so it took me a little while to notice him. But like putting people like Tobin Bell, Mark Boone Jr. in these small roles really bumps up your movie, in my opinion.
I also enjoyed seeing Keith David, who's another one of my favorite actors, pop up in this.
Talk about a movie full of amazing voices, too. Tobin Bell, Keith David. You put Keith David in something, I'm already interested. Like, that dude can be in anything. It doesn't matter. And yet again, he's Sergeant Cantrell, and all we know is he's a gunfighter. But like, okay, so he was a sergeant, so he's probably in the war at some point. Like, and he's great. He's got that ridiculous pipe of his was so good, and just his introduction is one of my favorites. And I captured that, and I'll play that later because his introduction is just so perfect. But yeah, he was wonderful in it, and then of course he goes out. I also do wish we had gotten maybe like one gunfight with him before he goes out the way that he did, just so we could kind of see how good he was.
He caught it bad.
Yeah, he did. Well, I definitely want to talk about these gunfights because they're something else. But yeah, seeing Keith, like, again, that's another one of those. Keith David, you put him in something and it just makes your movie better. He doesn't have to be a lead. He doesn't have to be in every scene, but he makes the movie. He elevates it. It's like having Pat Hingle as Horace the bartender. You know, who I will always remember as Commissioner Gordon because I grew up with the 1989 Batman, and Pat Hingle was Commissioner Gordon in that. Oh,
you know what? I hadn't put that together.
Yeah, and so
he looked familiar, but I didn't place that's where he was from.
If he had said something like he gave us the signal, you might have remembered because that was his last line in Batman. But like, again, he's awesome, and his introduction is great too. When the lady comes in asking for a room, and he's like putting liquor away on the shelf and doesn't even turn around, just says, "Whores are next door." And she's like, "Excuse me?" And he says it again. And oof, then he gets the stool kicked out from under him and he falls that whole way. And he's like, "All right, let's get the lady a nice room."
Right.
You know, and she ends up helping him out later, which was great with his daughter, which was a cool little kind of side plot that
part threw me off so bad. I was like, you just pimping your daughter out? Like,
yeah, it was rough, but it was that final scene. So it was the scene where she finally confronts Eugene. That's the character.
Yeah.
That you realize that Horace doesn't want his daughter involved the way that she is, but he kind of is just scared to do anything about it. He's been bullied into it. Which Eugene was played by Kevin Conway. Except in that scene, and I wrote down a note of this, I, for a second, thought that it was Stephen Root, who was, he's a character actor you've seen in a ton of stuff. He was in Office Space. He's
Okay.
My stapler. He was in News Radio, was him. He's been in a ton of stuff. But for a quick second, I thought it was Stephen Root, and it threw me because the character was so just gross.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I know Stephen Root's a really good character actor, but no, oh no, that's not him. Okay, phew. Good. But yeah, that guy was just a straight up bully and basically forced himself into that position. So Sharon Stone finally puts an end to it. But yeah, you're right. Like earlier on, it's just like, okay, he's just letting his daughter kind of, no, thank you. Yeah. Oh, Lance Henriksen is Ace. He was great for the short time that he's in it. And every good Western has to have that character, right? That guy because think about the Old West, you could just make up any story you wanted, and 90% of the people are never going to know that it's fake. So
Right.
those people just were all over the place, and Henriksen plays him to a T. Like he plays him perfectly. He's just charismatic enough to get away with telling these stories, and he can win over everybody. But like Ellen doesn't buy his shtick for a second. Like this, when he first walks in and he's got his deck of cards and he's like, he's used that line before about the special pack of cards, and people are always wowed by it, and she's just like, she doesn't care at all. So it's like her and Herod were the only ones that didn't buy his stories. But I like Lance Henriksen a lot, and that was a good look for him with the long hair and like that pencil thin mustache.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous, and I loved it. I remembered his fight with Herod being longer for some reason, and I don't know why. And I think it was that I conflated when he gets shot in the hand and you see the bullet hole.
Yeah.
And then when Keith David gets the bullet hole through his head, for some reason I conflated those two things to where we looked through Ace's hand and through that hole. But he, sadly, Ace, not only does he get just taken right out by Herod, but then he has all of his stuff stolen. And they just leave him in his skivvies in the street, which is very Western. It's very much like the thing that would happen. But they were the whitest long underwear I've ever seen. Because when they first took his boots off, I'm like, he's got some really white socks. And then they show them all like gang pile on him. It comes back and he's just wearing nothing but long underwear. I'm like, oh, wow, it's a one-piece underwear. Okay.
Yeah, they pulled those fresh out of the bag for the scene.
They did. I want those boots, though. Those boots were awesome with the playing cards on the side.
Yeah.
Those were great.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lance Henriksen, another great character actor. You pop into stuff, and he's just super fun. But we haven't even gotten to... okay, so we got to talk about Leo.
Yeah.
As the kid. This was not his first role. This was just after What's Eating Gilbert Grape. I think they started filming right after What's Eating Gilbert Grape. But he was 21 when he made this movie.
I didn't realize that there was such a big age difference between Leonardo DiCaprio and Sharon Stone. Sharon Stone is older than I thought she was, than I thought she is. And Leonardo, I think, is younger than I thought he was.
Yeah, he was 21. Sharon Stone was about 36 or so.
Yeah, I think there's 14 years between the two of them.
Yeah, and she was a big reason why he's in this movie. She saw him. She wanted him in it bad enough that she reportedly she paid his salary for the movie to have him in it. Because she's a co-producer, so she had some say in what was going on with things. And that's the story goes that she had seen him in something else and wanted him in this movie enough that she agreed to pay his salary to have him in it. One of the rumored names was Matt Damon at the time for the kid, which would have been, he was like 24, 25, so he's a couple years older, but still sort of that same age range. But there was something, even at 21 years old, there was a charisma that Leo had on screen. That
yeah. Oh, yeah. He eats up every scene he's in.
Oh, big time. He's great, and he brings an energy that the movie needed. That character needed to bring that energy, and to have him in a few scenes, and then the whole dynamic with him being John, or is it John Herod's kid, Gene Hackman's character, but Hackman's character never acknowledging that. Like, he never out and out acknowledges that it's his son.
So that was the thing I wasn't, I don't think they did real well in the movie. The only reason I realized that is because I was looking at the Wikipedia cast list before or while I was watching the movie to try to keep the character straight.
Sure.
And I realized that they had the same last name.
Okay.
But other than that, I don't think the movie does a great job of really leading you in that direction.
Well, there is the scene where Lady wakes up in the room with him, with Kid, and Kid's like making breakfast or whatever, and he's talking about all the stuff they did the night before, because Kid is sort of, it's funny, he's almost like Ace Hanlon in training. Like, he's gonna be that guy if he gets old enough where he has all the stories, because he's got a story for everything. He's talking up about everything they did the night before, and she's like, the last thing I remember is you throwing up behind the bar. So, but he says at that point that it's his dad. Like, he just out and out says, well, he's my father. And then later on, but I guess I can see in that nobody else talks about it, right? He does, but no one else in the town really says anything, and it feels like the thing that he would be telling like everybody.
Yeah, it feels like a thing in a small town.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go to any small town, everybody knows everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, even if it's not said, like, discussed outwardly in public, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels like something everyone would know. And I don't know. I just didn't feel like you could almost take him saying that is just another lie, like another story he's telling, without some sort of other corroboration. Like, it almost seems like something that would have made sense to have Court like mention in passing, like somebody who like knows John well enough to like, okay, like this, that would make sense for him to know, even if, and maybe say out loud, even if the rest of the townsfolk were too scared to do it.
That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but you're right. It and it's just a bummer for the kid who apparently all he wants is Herod's like respect, and he never gets it. And then even after he dies, Herod's like, well, it was never proven he was my son. Like, he can't even acknowledge it after he shot him and killed him. Like, that's just how much he didn't care for the kid at all. But hell of a performance from DiCaprio. I mean, he's chewing up scenes. He's great. I really enjoyed it. He's just got that. He's got that youthful arrogance, that type of arrogance that you only get when you don't know any better.
Right. Yeah.
Like, no one, you can tell him that he's not the fastest. He just doesn't understand that. He doesn't believe it because no one's shown it to him yet. Which is why his line right after the shot is great. Shit, that was fast.
Right.
So good. And we've danced around it. We've mentioned him enough times, but Gene Hackman as John Herod.
Oh, yeah.
Boy.
Gene Hackman does not get mentioned enough when people talk about the great American actors. I don't think he gets mentioned enough.
I think even as much as he gets mentioned, it's not enough. Because think of Gene Hackman in a movie and think of him not giving you 100% and giving you a great performance, regardless of the movie. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
And I mean, this is a man who he stopped acting in 2004 after Welcome to Mooseport, which, whether you like that movie or not, he's good in it.
I never saw that one.
But he just brought it all the time. He was 65 years old when this movie came out. When The Quick and the Dead came out, he was 65 years old. And he just kills it. And it doesn't matter if it's playing comedy in something like Royal Tenenbaums, if he's doing this type of movie, if he's doing Heist.
Great movie.
The Replacements he's great in. I love him in Enemy of the State.
Yes.
One of the great, not only American actors, but also yellers. Like it takes there's a certain thing to be able to like yell and kind of like angry acting, but in a way that never feels like you're overdoing it.
Also, to add to your list, Crimson Tide, which is one of acting's best things, is you get to see him and Denzel Washington go at it in a small space.
Yeah. So 1995 alone released The Quick and the Dead, Crimson Tide, and Get Shorty, and he was in all three of those. Like, that's nuts. But he got to play against Denzel Washington. That was amazing. Him and Will Smith was great, because that's, for 90s Will Smith, Enemy of the State is one of my favorites because it wasn't him being Will Smith.
Yep.
Which I
it also
really
gives
enjoyed.
us a Lisa Bonet sighting, which I'm always happy about.
There's nothing wrong with that ever. But Wyatt Earp he was in as Nicholas Earp, Little Bill in Unforgiven, which I hadn't seen The Quick and the Dead in long enough. I'm like, is he Little Bill in this? Because I just saw Unforgiven for the first time like a year and a half ago. And
Still haven't watched that movie.
I kept thinking his name in this was going to be Bill. I knew it wasn't Little Bill, but I thought maybe they had the same, like Bill whatever. I'm like, no, it's not Bill, it's John. But nobody, so yelling on screen in that kind of angry style of acting can be really difficult to pull off in a legitimate way, but he always seemed to be able to do it. I do remember in high school, my friends and I had a theory that we never got Samuel L. Jackson and Gene Hackman in the same movie because the movie couldn't, the world couldn't sustain that. That level of the two of them yelling at the same time would just be too much.
But we did get something close from a yelling perspective. Heist, because I think Delroy Lindo.
Oh yeah,
can give you that same type of yell, and they have that same smoothness.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Delroy is another one of my favorites.
Delroy,
great name too.
He does not get enough credit. That's a guy who's underrated. Delroy Lindo brings it. He brought it in Congo, and that movie is bonkers. It's not good, but he's awesome in it. I mean, who can yell "Stop eating my sesame cake" in a way that sounds not only funny but also threatening?
Right.
You want to laugh, but you're also going to put the cake back down.
Right. Right. Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, just Gene Hackman. I have so many notes here of just how good he is at being a bad guy, and a menacing bad guy. And Hackman has a charisma that lets him go from he can smile and he can deliver a line and he can do it exactly the same way and have it read in different manners for the scene. He can do the same thing and it can be endearing or it can be frightening. And he can flip so quickly too. And he just does
It's why
so
he was
much.
an amazing Lex Luthor.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah.
He plays Lex Luthor. He played him great. Also, one of my other favorite Gene Hackman sightings is Runaway Jury, which I love that movie. It's one of the 2 John Grisham books that he did. I like him better in Runaway Jury than I did in The Firm. But yeah, which was his next to last movie. It was a movie he did right before Welcome to Mooseport.
That's right. I have not. Boy, it's been a while, so I don't remember a ton about either Grisham one that he did. But look, if it's Gene Hackman, it's going to be good. It's just I looked through his list of movies, and every single one of them that I've seen, even if it's a movie I don't love, I can't say anything bad about him in any of them.
And he did a lot of really good movies at the end, like Under Suspicion, like on his tail way out, he gave us a lot of The Mexican.
Yep.
A lot of really good stuff.
And varied too. Like he could do Under Suspicion, or he could do Heist, and he could also do The Replacements, or
yes, I love that movie. I probably shouldn't, but I love it.
The Replacement, The Birdcage. He is hilarious in The Birdcage, like because he's the perfect foil for Robin Williams and Nathan Lane and their manic energy, for him to be the straight man to the crazy man in that sort of scenario, and he's so good in The Birdcage. And you mentioned Crimson Tide, which is a movie I haven't thought about enough lately, and now I want to watch it again. Also a movie with what's his name? Aragorn. Why can't I think of his name now?
Viggo?
Yes, Viggo
Mortensen?
Yes,
Viggo.
That's it.
Sorry.
But just and Hackman in this as John Herod is just terrible. He's such a good villain, and he's not scared of anything, which is great. Which is why the final gunfight is so good, because he's just a little bit scared. Like he knows Court, and he knows Court is good enough to beat him, and it's just enough to to give him a slight bit of pause.
It's also why he never sees the end coming.
Right.
Because he's really focused on it being Court.
Yes.
And that's not his true problem. No,
it's not. It isn't, but he didn't know his true problem because he never saw her coming. He didn't know who she was.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I can't get over how much I like him. And this is, a couple years after he won an Oscar for Unforgiven. And watch that movie, because honestly, like, that movie is real. It's sort of one of those where it's been talked up and hyped up so much you almost don't think it can live up to the expectation. And then when I watched it for the first time, I was like, no, this does. This meets it.
Yeah, part of the issue for me is that I am not a huge Western fan. I've watched more of them probably in the last 5 years than I have traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's always been on the list. Unforgiven, Tombstone, always been on the list. Just haven't ever pulled the trigger to do it.
Yeah, Westerns are interesting for me because growing up, I would have told you I'm not really a Western fan. And what I found out was it's not so much that I'm not a Western fan, it's that for a period of time, there were so many of them made in Hollywood, and so many early movies were Westerns. And it's sort of like Westerns at one time were like what comic book movies are now, where just so many of them getting made. And it got to a point where they became very cookie cutter. And what you find is the good ones can kind of bubble up to the top. And this movie was Sam Raimi's sort of love letter to spaghetti Westerns and Sergio Leone.
Yeah.
And those types of movies. And that was a thing where when Sergio Leone came along and started doing his Westerns, it changed the way Westerns were being done. And those tend to be a little bit better. But for me, I don't love a movie because it's a Western, but I find that a lot of movies I really like, they somehow, these Westerns keep popping up. Unforgiven, Tombstone, Open Range is a great one with Kevin Costner.
That's a good Kevin Costner movie.
Hmm?
Said I love a good Kevin Costner movie.
Yeah, and it's definitely one, it's a slow burn, which can sometimes be real dull for people if you're not a Western fan. Open Range can feel, the first bit of it can really feel like it drags, but it's worth it. But what I've noticed too is like the style of Westerns in storytelling has over the years infiltrated other genres to where you get your space Westerns and you get, movies that are not set in the Old West, but they're a Western of sorts.
I mean, look at Yellowstone.
Yeah. Yep.
Even Sons of Anarchy. Even Sons of Anarchy is a Western retelling of a Shakespeare movie.
Yeah.
Set in the world of bikers.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And I think that's what I like is a Western. It's on its face, doesn't have to be horses and outlaws and one horse towns and this kind of thing. It's a style of storytelling. But if you can put it in that Old West setting and do it well, it's a lot of fun because you get like, there's something I really like about a movie set like this, right? Where you can tell they made this on a back lot, but you can do that with a Western because the towns were so small and there were there were a few buildings. You can build it on a back lot. You set the whole thing in there and there's just a look and feel to it that when it's done right, I just love. And those spaghetti Westerns were a thing, like, you know, it was what really helped launch Clint Eastwood. And there was Django was another one, the old Django.
Yep.
Not Unchained, but the actual just Django. Once Upon a Time in the West.
Although Unchained, I mean, is Tarantino's love letter to Leone. So
that's true. And so there's just something fun about those. Like I really, really like them. And this one just hits all the marks. I love Sam Raimi too. I like his style.
Funny question.
Okay.
Had DiCaprio done a Western between Quick and the Dead and Django Unchained?
I don't believe so. In fact, I don't know. I'm pretty sure he hadn't because he's only got 47 credits. So it's not like he's got, hundreds of credits. But Django was 2012. And looking back through it, I mean, the closest he gets is Gangs of New York. So no, he hadn't.
Yeah.
Because he had done the Basketball Diaries came out the same year as The Quick and the Dead, which was, I think, another Sharon Stone produced movie, if I remember correctly. I think she had
hold on now. Maybe somebody needs to look into the story of Leonardo DiCaprio and Sharon Stone. Going on out here.
Thing is, he likes the younger girls, though.
I mean, but listen, he may not have always. When he was young.
This is true.
When he was young, he might have...
But no, he did Quick and the Dead, and then his next big one was Romeo and Juliet, and then Titanic.
Yeah.
Man in the Iron Mask, The Beach, which is an underrated movie. I like that one a lot.
Never watched that movie.
It's weird.
I have to add it to the list.
But I very much liked it. And then Gangs of New York, Aviator, The Departed, Blood Diamond is another really good one. That was one I talked about last week because Jaimin Hansen.
I did love Blood Diamond.
But yeah, no, he hadn't done a Western until Django. I mean, does Django Unchained, and then, 7 years later, he's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he's playing an actor who used to be in a Western.
Yeah. Great movie.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good stuff. I mean, just up and down this cast. Also, I have to mention cast member. He played Ratsy, who was kind of Herod's little lackey. He was the one always pushing Court around. He's the one that got shot in the end, right?
Yes. He shot him like at a distance at the end.
Yep. Told him to get out of town. He had 20 seconds. And then like a minute and a half goes by before he turns around and shoots him. I think like the trivia that I read was that the actor had to run a lap to be in the same spot when he actually turned around because they did like a long take or something. But Ratsy is played by an actor who was also in, I always remember him in Ace Ventura Pet Detective as Woodstock. He has one scene where he's like the little technical guy that helps him find the fish. He helps him find the dolphin and all that. But he's played by an actor who has the greatest stage name I've ever heard. Rainer Shine.
Yeah.
It is a fantastic stage name. It is on that level with Rip Torn of just like it's obviously a stage name, and I love every second of it. Like Rainer Shine.
He's been in a lot. I'm looking at his credits right now. He's been in a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I remember him from now is he was in a really good episode of The West Wing called In Excelsis Deo. He plays a homeless man who has a kind of a large part in the plot of that episode. But great list of things he's been in.
Yeah. Yep. My Cousin Vinny, The Rookie. But Ace Ventura is the one I always remember him in because it's the scene where Ace has to go in, he has to knock on the door and then give the password of New England clam chowder. And he goes inside there and it's the guy with he's wearing 2 pairs of glasses and he's got all the computer screens and he's it's a completely silly character, but I just always remember him from it. So, yeah. And his voice, he's got a very distinct voice. It's kind of a little nasally. And there's just something to it. And I forgot, the first gunfighter to lose in this movie is, the Swede, Gutzen, and he's played by Sven Ole Thorsen, who we just talked about last week in Gladiator, because he was in Gladiator as Tigris. He was the gladiator that Maximus fights with all the tigers around them, and he had the helmet that had the mask.
He's the one that came out of retirement, right?
Yes. Yep. That's him.
Okay.
And I had completely forgotten he was in this movie. And he pops up in that early scene as, the Swedish national champion, and then he's only in the one gunfight. But he's another one of those, he's a stunt actor, character actor that will pop up in movies, usually playing a giant because the guy is huge. He was I want to say he's 6'4", 6'5" bodybuilder or former bodybuilder. He doesn't look it in this movie at all. That's the one thing. They don't play up his size. But I just thought that was cool that I talked about him last week and he shows up in this movie. So we got him.
Here's
and
a fun
Russell
fact
Crowe.
about him. He's been in 15 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies as either a stunt person or an actor.
I think, if I remember right, they had a pretty good friendship. So, yeah. Speaking of the gunfights, dude, they were great. The gunfights in this were awesome.
Yes.
And so here's again is that Sam Raimi thing, which I started to touch on, that I love his style, because this was very much done in the spaghetti western style, but it had a lot of Raimi touches to it. So spaghetti westerns would always have the showdown where you'd get a wide shot, and then the next shot would be zoomed in and then zoomed in further, and you'd get that back and forth as you zoom in on somebody's eyes and stuff like that.
Right.
Sam Raimi will do that, but he'll have everything push in at the same time, and he'll throw in a Dutch tilt, and he'll make it look weird, like he would do in Darkman or Army of Darkness or something like that. So it had that touch to it, but he also wanted to make all of the gunfights feel different. So every one of them is a little bit different in the way it's shot and the way it's presented. Whether it's the long build up and then the gunfight, or almost no build up and the gunfight happens. The one with Lady and Eugene, where it's them fighting in the rain, which is the only time that happens. And we don't even get a build up for that. It literally just hops in partway into it, and they're just shooting at each other running down the street.
Right. Yeah.
I guess was the hardest one to film, probably because of all the rain machines and having to, more than likely do multiple takes, because man, that rain was coming down.
I thought that gunfight was a little odd, because to me, it made it seem like she wasn't a very good shot.
Yeah. Well, she's never portrayed as being a great shot that I remember. But I can see what you're saying. Because how many times? Well, she has to fire how many times? I don't remember now.
She didn't reload.
That's true. No, I thought about that.
But I feel like she used all 6 of her bullets. Now, granted, she shot him in the crotch, and she shot him. She shot him in
the arm.
She shot him in the crotch and in the shoulder. That was not the kill shot.
No,
but I feel like she missed a few of them too.
So the kill shot was when she went back inside to get the drink.
Yeah,
and then
and
he
she left him alive. He came back in.
Yeah.
Which then that shot and then the shot where she saves Court were very precise shots, right? And like I felt like, you know, they originally didn't want to let her into the competition. And then she saves Court, and I think I felt like they looked at her shooting and they were like, "Oh, this woman can really shoot. Let's let her in." But then I don't know. I just kind of felt like her shots should have been a little more precise to kind of keep that build up. But
yeah, no, you're not wrong. I'd have to watch it again to really kind of dissect that. I remember just thinking like, good Lord, they're just going like, it's not even a competition thing. She just hates this guy so much. She's so disgusted by him.
She wants him dead.
So maybe that was part of it. Maybe it's that, like, it was flying into that rage.
I also thought it odd that she left him. Like, she didn't kill him. Like, she was in the rage. She wanted him dead. She was right to want him dead. Like, he's out here raping young children and whatnot. But then she leaves him. And he, you know, he makes the mistake of being like, I'm not through with you. And, well,
she was
it didn't work for him. But, yeah.
And I get somewhat where they were going with that. And the whole idea of she'd never killed anyone. And she couldn't bring herself to kill someone, even though she was in all that anger. But like, by that point,
that wasn't true either.
Right, we had crossed that bridge already. So you're right. You're right in that it does feel a little bit odd. But just okay. So you got all these different gunfights, and I love the way they go down. But I also like that idea of those giant bullet holes. And the way that they would portray those, whether it was in the hand, whether it was the one into Keith David's head, that you get a camera shot through. That's a very Sam Raimi moment right there. The camera, the shot through that. Or even at the end with Herod, where he gets shot, and the first thing we see is him from the neck up. And then it's either a cut or a pan down to his shadow. I think it was a cut. And it's his shadow, but with a bullet hole in the shadow. Yeah. That was just
they used big bullets back then.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, you figure it was probably either 357 or maybe even like a 44.
Yeah, there was a lot of 45s.
Yeah.
But I love that because, and that's sort of what gave this the slightly lighter tone feel that I was talking about earlier on, where it's like, it's not a light movie, but that idea of these ridiculous looking bullet holes that aren't really realistic, right, changes the tone of it just a little bit from something like Tombstone or Unforgiven that are grittier and more real to life.
Right.
That's a Sam Raimi thing that he would do. Like, he does horror, but he does horror in a way that kind of also makes you chuckle. Like, you see that shot of Herod's shadow, and then you realize there's light coming through the bullet hole. You can't help but laugh a little bit at that, because it's just it's silly, it's cartoonish.
I mean, even when the kid dies, like, there's a level of levity to like that whole, oh man, shit, that was fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yep. And even like DiCaprio in the way he starts kind of sobbing and like, I don't want to die, it's sad. It's affecting, but it's also just a little bit too much and a little silly.
You know what it reminded me of was I can't think of the guy's name that plays Spider-Man. But at the end of Infinity War, you know, when he's kind of fading, like, that's what that made me think of, was like kind of like the dramatic way that he's going out. Like, that's what I thought of with the kid dying like that.
Tom Holland, yeah.
Tom Holland.
Yes. I don't want to go.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, a little bit of that. It's just, I loved you had the gunfight with Court and was it not Running Bull? What was his name? The Spotted Horse. Spotted Horse. Where he's like, Spotted Horse is like, you cannot be killed by a bullet, which apparently not one. It takes one into the head to finally put him down, and even that took its time.
Right.
But like That one was again, it was a little bit different from the others. And instead of it being one shot, they drew that out, and then you got Court trying to get a bullet from somebody, and here's the blind kid searching through all his bullets to find the gun and throw it, or find the bullet that's right for the gun that'll fit.
Right.
So I loved that. Meanwhile, here's Spotted Horse just firing wildly. So this was something that I thought about a lot on this watch through. All this gunplay is going on. All these shootouts in the street, people firing off guns in the saloon at the beginning, and all of this kind of stuff. Not one person caught a stray bullet anywhere in this movie.
Yeah.
It's like the townsfolk were immune to bullet fire. It was amazing because there would be shots where they're setting up a gunfight, and Horace would be like, all right, the street is yours. And you look, and here's a shot of one of the gunfighters and like a half dozen people standing behind him. It's like, none of those people want to be there right now. They want to spread out. Right. And so it cracked me up every time. I'm like, man, in real life, there's so many people getting shot in this movie, just left and right. When they're shooting in the saloon, when he's firing off, when they got Court on the chair,
right, yeah.
And they're like shooting right at people. There's people behind there, and in the stairs, and I guess there's no second floor or nothing above that area.
Wasn't the hotel above it?
See, that's what I thought, but I think maybe that front part was kind of a cathedral ceiling.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
So it might not have been. But
that
still.
They put a lot of faith in the strength of 2x4s and
it was
whatever.
It was strong timber is what that was.
Right. Yeah.
Because I couldn't help myself. I'm like, oh man, the realism guy in me right now is just having a field day. Like, come on. But it's a movie. Suspend some disbelief. Enjoy it.
Just a little bit.
We did get, and again, it was sort of that first round of gunfights was mostly done through a montage, which I get for pacing, but I also was a little bit of a bummer because it would have been great to see a couple of these characters. And so if I have a complaint about this movie, it's not even a complaint about the movie. I just love the world building they did in this story, and I want more of that. I want to expand it. Like, I think this would make a great limited run comic series.
Yeah,
where you could have an issue dedicated to all these different kind of main characters. You've got Cantwell, you've got Scars. You can tell all their backstories in these comics leading up to the movie, all that kind of stuff, where we can just learn more about them. And I think that would be really cool. I talk a lot especially on this show about movies that would make great, series today, but I think that comic series would just be cool to have. Here's what led up to The Quick and the Dead, and you can do all these different people, and then you can dive in a little bit more to some of the backstories and flesh them out some.
I thought this movie could have been 120 minutes.
It could have.
I don't, and I'll say I don't remember what the general length of movies was in 95. And maybe 120 just wasn't something that seemed to be on the table back then. But I felt like the movie could have been longer.
It's one of those where there's a school of thought by a lot of people that anything longer than an hour and a half is too long. I know I have had conversations with people who have told me that. They're like, if that movie's more than an hour and a half long, I don't want to watch it, which I don't get. But I'm also one that will sit down and watch a 3.5 hour movie and I don't care. So I'm weird. Yeah. I understand that. But
yeah, give me the extended editions of The Lord of the Rings. That's what I watch.
That's all I watch. But I think a movie needs to be as long as it needs to be to tell its story.
Mm-hmm.
And if the pacing is good, I don't care how long a movie is.
Yeah.
I really don't. Because if the pacing is good, you're invested in. And I remember coming out of a movie like The Green Mile is the example I like to give. I went and saw that in the theater when it debuted. And I walked out of the movie and I was like, there was no way that was a 3 hour long movie, but it was because the pacing was so good on it. This one paced really well and it fit the hour and 45 minutes they gave it, but you could have easily tacked on 15 to 20 minutes to this movie.
And it would have been fine.
And it wouldn't have hurt because you get to learn more and know more about some of the smaller characters and even your main characters like Ellen, like Court, because again, Court is a character we know so little about, that would just be great to learn more and to have just that little bit more. It reminds me a little. Did you see Bullet Train yet?
Yes, I actually just bought it.
Okay.
This week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Bullet Train is great, and Bullet Train does this type of thing really well, where it's got that ensemble of crazy characters, and you get a little. I felt Bullet Train almost at a couple of moments. It was like, well, we didn't necessarily need that. It works. Like, we didn't need
Bullet
the
Train is
backstory.
a spaghetti western in a lot of ways.
It is. It's a lot like Bullet Train reminded me of Smokin' Aces a lot.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and those
Another
are
great movie.
yeah, those are both very, very much the spaghetti western, the sort of all the outlaws coming into town to go after one guy.
Yeah.
Type of thing. Or in Bullet Train's case, it's going after like a briefcase, but
Right.
same idea.
Yeah.
And Quick and the Dead sort of has that in a way, because Court is brought there against his will, but he's there because of Herod. Ellen is there because of Herod. The kid is there because he lives there, but he's also there because of Herod. Cantwell is there because of Herod. He's paid, and that's that backstory I want to know. Like, okay, he was in the army. He's a sergeant, but he's not a sergeant anymore. He still goes by that, but he's a mercenary. He's just a gun for hire. So there's a backstory I want to learn. And he's there for Herod. Like, Ace is the only one in town that we know of. Ace and Scars are the only like names we know of that aren't there because of Herod, like a vendetta of any kind. Ace is just going around, making a name for himself. And Scars apparently just goes there because the feds don't find him until they do and put him back in jail. But it's just one of those really cool. I love that structure of a story, and I thought it was great. And we didn't mention Gary Sinise.
Yeah.
This is pre or right around Forrest Gump. So like Gary Sinise hadn't blown up to become a big star, but it's a pretty good get to have him for that small of a role, but a pivotal one. A very important role that I think you got to have an actor that can give you something emotional in that moment. And that's what he delivered, a very authentic emotion in that moment where he's trying to, and I forget that scene so much because we get the flashback. The movie does that great thing I like, which is showing us our flashback and then expanding on it every time, so we get a little bit more as we go.
A little bit more, yeah.
And the final version of the flashback is heart-wrenching because of what she went through. It's just rough, and Gary Sinise helps to sell that. And there again, there's that kind of, I want to know more about this story. So after that happens to Ellen, and she goes through that with her father, what happened to her for the next 25 years or however long it's supposed to be? For her to hold that grudge against Herod and obviously learn how to handle a gun and learn how to do things, but Herod to have no clue who she is. So she never made an attempt on him. Like, there's a couple of issues of a comic I want right there.
Let me ask you, did you get the sense that the doctor knew who she was the whole time?
Oh, yes. Yes, I absolutely got that sense. He knew who she was the moment she stepped into town.
Right.
And he was, I forgot to mention him too. That was, where is his name? It was his last major movie, Roberts Blossom, who, if he didn't look super familiar in the moment, if you've seen Home Alone, you know who he is. He was the old man with the salt in Home Alone, Mr. Marley. And he was an actor. He lived until 87 years old, passed away in 2011. But this was one of the last major movies that he made. He did like a couple of TV series appearances, and that was it. This is kind of the tail end of his career. But yeah, he definitely knew who she was, like the second she walked into town, which is crazy to think about. But I say that, and this is a story I've told before, but I was working in a retail store, an Apple store, and my kindergarten teacher came into the store, and I was helping her out, and she recognized me without me saying a word. She just stopped for a second. She looked at me, kind of gave a quick little head tilt, and then knew exactly who I was. I had not seen this woman in probably 30 years. The last time she had seen me, I was in elementary school. I am now 6'4". I have this huge beard, and she knew exactly who I was. So every time I make this joke,
did you recognize her?
I recognized her.
Oh, okay.
But she got to saying something to me before I had a chance to, because I was just kind of helping. I didn't want to,
right?
Because my assumption was she's not going to know who I am. You know, it's been so long, and she was a teacher for decades. So it's
right.
So when I see that happen in a movie now, I'm like, okay, it's not as far fetched as I thought. Like these people do exist. But yeah, he totally knew who she was, and I like Robert's Blossom. He had a very grandfatherly feel to him.
Yeah,
and especially in this, and I love, like, he's the town doctor, and when Herod changes the rules to all the gunfights are to the death, he just eventually gives up. Like at one point he walks out, and I love the shot where it's just, I think it's, I want to say it's Cantwell, and all you see is his feet, and the doctor just walks out, looks over, and just says, "Yeah, he's dead." He doesn't even check him. It's just like, "Yeah, guy's dead. I'm not even going to waste my time." I love that. There's something about that made me chuckle. I'm like, yeah, he realizes there's no point.
No point.
And then, of course, when they drag away Scars, he's got to make the comment of like, this guy we got to bury him deep. He smells. This was also the mortician, or the undertaker, when she's riding into town at the beginning of the movie. He's got one line where he says, 5'8", right? I'm never wrong. That was Woody Strode. This was his last movie. He was another one of them character actors that would pop up in a lot of stuff. And this was the last movie he made. So for some reason, this ended some careers. I mean, granted, maybe 60,
they
70.
Weren't spring chickens.
Yeah, exactly. They're in their 70s by that point. No, this movie was just fun. Like, there's a fun atmosphere to it that I really just can get behind. And whether you're a Western fan or not, I think you can find something to enjoy in this. The music is great. It's Alan Silvestri that did the music. And what I've found about Alan Silvestri over the years is he does really good film scores that fit the movie really, really well, but you don't think about outside of the movie. Like the music for Predator, for instance. The first Predator's score fits so well. It just, the slightly science fiction-y sort of idea, and he's got like this just really cool score, but I never think of it outside of watching the movie and how much I like it in the movie. It's not like my love of the score to Jurassic Park or the score to The Lord of the Rings, where I will put those albums on and listen to them while I'm doing stuff. I don't think to do that with a lot of Alan Silvestri scores, which is a bummer because the guy did a lot. Back to the Future 3 was him, and I think he might have even done the first Back to the Future. But I liked the music in this movie. It fit all the scenes really, really well. He did, Avengers is him. Forrest Gump.
Did he?
Yeah. He did Avengers Endgame. He was the composer.
Oh. The Avengers movies all had good music in it.
Yeah. And that is one, that is a score, or
he did all of them.
That Avengers theme that I do think about outside of the movie.
He did all 4 Avengers movies.
Okay. I mean, he's got 140 credits as a composer. Like he works. What was it? I think I read in 1990. Yeah, so in 1990 he had Back to the Future Part 3, The Young Guns, and Predator 2, all in the same year. It's pretty good. He did Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Hey, that's classic.
That is. He's got a lot. Gosh, some of these I forgot about. And things you wouldn't think of, like Father of the Bride. He did the music for that. Or Fern Gully was him. That's got some good music in it.
Yeah.
So, Grumpy Old Men. He did Grumpy Old Men, and then comes right back around, does Clean Slate and Forrest Gump. Which is just a weird.
He also did The Mummy Returns.
Oh. So, he's done quite a bit. And I like him as a composer because, again, he's... I don't want to say he's like the Gene Hackman of composers, but it's sort of that same thing where, like, you put him in something, you get Alan Silvestri to do the music, you're going to get solid music. And it's going to fit what you're doing. And it's kind of like when you would cast Gene Hackman, you would get good work out of Gene Hackman, whatever it was. So, I like that. Reindeer Games? Completely forgot.
That's a great movie.
That's one I got to watch again. It's been, I think, 22 years since I've seen it.
A very young Charlize Theron in that movie.
I'm in.
Not a hard sell at that point, right?
No, not really.
I think Gary Sinise is in that movie too.
That's because that's Affleck, right? Affleck and yeah, he is. Look at that. It's a pretty good cast. Affleck, Sinise, Theron, Mark Atchison. I like him. Isaac Hayes. All right.
Oh, that's right. He is. I forget what he's doing in that movie, but yeah.
So I did capture a few clips from this because there are some good ones. They might not be the things you're thinking of, but I got to play a few of them. So this first one is Mark Boone Jr., and it's the only one of his I captured, but most of what he did in the movie was kind of growl and grunt. But I loved this exchange because this is right as he walks up for the first time. He just comes walking out of nowhere. Okay. So this scene is great because it's a long take where he rides up on the horse, gets off the horse, walks into the saloon, and then a guy comes flying out the doors who immediately scrambles, gets up, hops on the horse, and rides away.
Yes.
And it's all one take. And then as he's running to the horse to ride away, Scars comes back out, pulls a gun, and shoots him off the horse down the street. I was like, that's cool. Like, that's just a well-staged shot.
Yeah.
And then for him to turn around and walk up to Sharon Stone, and he just says,
"You're pretty."
You're not.
And you can hear the flies buzzing around him.
Yeah.
And she just tells him off right away, and it cracked me up. You're purty. Ugh. Ugh. He's got that big scar coming down the one side of his face. He looked like he smelled bad.
That line made me think of something that I thought was odd. Sharon Stone seemed to be entirely too clean for her line of work. There's that scene where, like, when she wakes up in the kid's bedroom,
mm-hmm.
and she's wearing what looks like a man's shirt that's got like a cut in the front and it's kind of short, and so you can kind of see a lot of her. It's like there's no way at this time she would be this clean.
And the funny thing is, you mentioned that, I thought the same thing, but the rest of the movie doesn't have that. Like, a lot of times in early Westerns, everything looked too clean because that was just the way you shot movies. And then over time, we started getting more kind of grimy look and sort of that, oh, what would this actually look like instead of doing a stage play of a Western. And this movie does have that because you've got, people with terrible looking teeth, and you've got grimy looking, like Court spends the whole movie, he's just covered in this thin layer of dust at all times. But yeah, she just looked like she just walked onto a commercial for like shampoo all the time.
Yeah.
It was funny because I thought that same thing. Like, she's just remarkably clean and has remarkably white teeth and like very clear skin. Always. So, but she's purty. And then this was the final moment of Scars.
We're gonna have to bury this old man deep. He stinks something up.
Yes, it's raining. So good. I mentioned it earlier, but this was the introduction of Keith David, and I cut down the pause just because it was kind of long. But this one.
Sergeant Cantrell.
How do you spell that?
Correctly.
How do you spell that correctly? Oh, man, and with that voice too, it's just
yeah. Listen, that voice it's unmistakable.
Absolutely.
When I saw Nope, like, have you seen Nope?
I have not yet.
Okay.
I
He's
want
in
to.
Nope. I won't give any more description of why he's in Nope. But I thought it was him, and then when his character started talking, I was like, "Oh, for sure, that is Keith David."
There are voices that you will recognize immediately. It doesn't matter. It happened to me in, well, actually, 2 movies. So, did you ever see Phone Booth with Colin Farrell?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yep.
In that movie, it's Kiefer Sutherland on the other end of the phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I knew throughout the entirety of the movie that it was Kiefer Sutherland. I never had a question about it. A friend of mine was like, I didn't realize it was him until they showed him at the end. I'm like, how do you not? It's his voice. Like
He didn't
sounds
watch
like,
24.
He didn't watch 24, and there was 24, and also at the same time there were a bunch of ESPN commercials for like hockey, and Kiefer Sutherland
Yes.
did the voiceover for
Yeah.
those. So it's like his voice was burned into my brain. And the other one was in Ocean's 11. There is a scene towards the end where the SWAT team comes in, and it's all of the Ocean's gang with their masks down, on the SWAT masks, and that's when they're walking the money out of the casino. And one of them speaks, and it's very clearly Brad Pitt, and his voice is distinct enough that I was like, I had figured out what was going on by that point, that the SWAT team wasn't who they said they were, because of his voice. So it's just like one of those things. You hear those certain voices, and Keith David's got a voice that, I mean, if you watched anything animated in the 90s, Keith David was in there somewhere. Like, he did so much
Keith
voice
David
work.
did Static, the Static Shock cartoon.
I think so. I know he did Gargoyles. I know he did a lot of English dubs for anime. I remember him distinctly in like Princess Mononoke. He does a role in that. Like, he was one of those stable of people that you needed something done, you called up Keith David, and it's just that voice. Like, that's a voice that commands respect. You sit up and listen. So that was great. I had to capture this because this was so ridiculous. It really. It feels like it should only exist in a movie like this by Sam Raimi, and yet there's a part of me that thinks this was real in the Old West too. And this is when the guy that challenges Court to the first round, and then he says, I brought my boys, they don't get to church much. And the one kid just yells,
Daddy's gonna kill you, preacher!
And then the 4 boys rush Court and just start beating on him. Like, that felt like it shouldn't, it felt so ridiculous that it was almost true. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. No,
it was
I
so
could see
silly.
that.
And it just made me laugh, and so I had to capture that. My daddy's going to kill you, preacher.
And I love the part then when Sharon Stone comes up and like punts one of the kids, and they're like, what are we, Dad? It's like, you, sir, y'all were just jumping a poor guy. Like, don't
comes
go
up
crying
like-
for your daddy now.
Grabbing one kid and grabbing another one, and then she just punts one of them, just gets him right out of there. This is Robert's the doctor, and it was his one line, and this moment in the movie was meant to. This is when Ellen is trying to leave, and she goes to the graveyard, and she's looking for her father's grave, and he shows up, and he's like, they smashed the headstone, they moved him, they burned his body, all of that. When he says this,
There are good people here. They're just cowards like me.
and it's a real emotional moment, right? There's good people here, but they're all cowards like me. It felt like we needed a little bit more build for that. That's where that extra 15 minutes could have helped, of like giving us some more of this emotional beat to build that up, because that's the moment where she's stealing her resolve and decides to come back and not give up and run away. But it's a great delivery there.
It also gives a little better context to that scene where Keith David's character is introduced.
Yes.
Because you realize they're paying, like, and I can't remember if that scene is before or after Sergeant dies. when she's in the graveyard?
It's after.
It's after. Okay. And so yeah, that also illuminated that too, because he kind of explains it. But yeah, I actually liked that scene a little more contextually to Sargent's character than I did Gene Hackman's kind of monologue about it. Although that monologue fits, it's very good for the story. It gives you a lot about the Herod character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Leo, and I've already said it once, but got to have Leo say it.
Shit, that was fast.
It's good. That is the proper reaction to that moment. And we just, I mean, I gotta reiterate, he was 21 years old making this movie. Okay.
Yeah.
At 21 years old, I was not anywhere close to that level of like anything. Certainly not acting on a set with, I mean, Gene Hackman, Sharon Stone, and granted, nobody really knew who Russell Crowe was at the time, but to say that you were on a set with those people is pretty impressive at 21 years old.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good start, and it really shows you how good he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at what he had done before, and I think the only, like, What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Yeah, which
and Poison Ivy.
He did get an Academy Award nomination for What's Eating Gilbert Grape. He's very good in that. But yeah, it's like What's Eating Gilbert Grape, and he had filmed The Basketball Diaries, which I think was released the same year as this movie. And
okay,
that is one that he's very good in as well. But it was early on. He was still just a kid and making a name for himself, and that's the great thing here is you got your veterans in Sharon Stone and Gene Hackman, right, and bringing in people like Lance Henriksen and Tobin Bell and Keith David, who have been around for a while. And then DiCaprio and Crowe are that newer generation kind of coming in. Even though Russell Crowe was 31, he wasn't a kid, but to American audiences, he was brand new, you know, and for him to go from this to Virtuosity to like The Insider and Mystery Alaska. And then it just keeps going, Gladiator and A Beautiful Mind, and so on and so forth. Like, he's had a hell of a career.
Yeah.
And it got started in the U.S. here. And
I'm not sure that I think Russell Crowe has ever done a bad movie. I mean, Virtuosity might be the worst movie he's ever done.
Yeah. I mean, there's varying accounts. Like, some people didn't love, what was it? The Mummy. That he did with Tom Cruise.
Oh, I forgot he was in that. You know what? That movie is a fun time. I rewatched that not too long ago, because I like Sofia Boutella.
Okay, yeah. I think the problem that I have is like it was trying to start off on like step 3 of building a universe.
Yeah.
And that's where it fell apart. But I mean, you look at some of his other stuff, The Nice Guys. I guess people didn't love Noah.
Nice Guys is hilarious, though.
Yeah, Nice Guys is good stuff. Robin Hood was another one that people didn't love. And it's weird. It feels like Russell Crowe went through this period of time where he was a little too self-serious. And it feels like The Nice Guys was where he started letting a little more of his looser side into his movie roles, if that makes sense. Although he had done it earlier he was in The Man with the Iron Fists. So, like, obviously he knows how to just have fun in a movie.
Right.
But it was this period of time where he was doing, 3:10 to Yuma, American Gangster, Body of Lies. Like, there's 3 great movies back to back.
Yep.
And then Robin Hood, The Next 3 Days, Les Mis.
State of Play was pretty good.
Oh yeah, State of Play.
I am not a huge fan of Noah as a movie, but I think he does a great job in it.
So, I'm with you in that he's also not had he hasn't had a lot of bad movies. Let's put it that way. He's had a couple that were like lukewarm. Like, I didn't hate Robin Hood. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, it was, but I'm a sucker for a Robin Hood movie anyway. Like,
in some ways, I thought that movie was better than the Costner movie. And I like the Costner movie.
So, in a lot of ways it is. I think part of it is that the initial idea, if I remember correctly, Ridley Scott wanted to do was the Robin Hood tale, but from the point of view of the Sheriff of Nottingham. And it ended up not working out that way, and everything got reworked into what we got. But I feel like the initial idea was much more interesting to do it that way. But I will say that there are certain elements of the Ridley Scott Robin Hood that are better than the Costner movie. It doesn't have the camp that the Costner movie had, though. And that's the thing that, like, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves is still watchable now, not because it was a great epic action film, but it was good enough at that, and it has that campiness to it. The over-the-top performance of Alan Rickman. And, the silly, some of the silly humor that helped to make it enjoyable, years and decades on. But yeah, I mean, Russell Crowe, he doesn't have a lot of stinkers. Let's put it that way. There's not those movies that you're just like, ugh, good Lord, he was in that piece of crap.
Right.
Because he chooses things well. I do have a couple Gene Hackman clips. Got to play those because it's Hackman. Two of them actually come back to back. First one was when, and this is a great introduction to him. This is after he's come walking in to the saloon, and when Sharon Stone wants to enter the competition, so she says she's going to sign up, and we get this exchange.
No women in quick draws against the rules. There's no rule against ladies.
And like, okay, all right. So he doesn't discriminate if anybody can be in there, but then he immediately backs it up with this backhanded compliment. It ends up being a backhanded compliment because he backs it up with,
It's just the women can't shoot for shit.
That's right.
it's like, oh, all right. Well, now we know we know who we're dealing with. Like, you immediately know who this guy is. And then, this was one I wanted to get because this is an example of what I was talking about, where he can flip that switch and go super menacing on you in no time. And I loved this shootout because it starts off, you don't realize that you're in the middle of a gunfight, because it's Ace and Herod talking, and the way they shoot everything, it's all one shots up close. So it feels like it's just the two of them having a conversation. Like he walked up on him on the street and they start talking.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get that pullback and they're 50 feet apart and it's the gunfight. And I was like, that's a cool way to set that up because you're just not ready for it. But it's when he said this that has that, he went from 0 to 100 on the menacing scale in the middle of this sentence.
You see, I was the one that really killed the Terrence brothers. And I doubt if a lying little chicken shit like you was even in the same state.
And it's that middle part where you can hear his mouth doesn't open all the way, and he's like grinding his way through lying little chicken shit. That he just hates this guy so much because he's making up stories that Herod knows the truth of, and that bugs him to his core. And it's just like, I'm watching that, I'm just like, oh, it gives you chills almost.
Right, yeah.
It's so good. And then finally, if Gene Hackman's in a movie, he's going to yell at some point. And if he's going to yell, it's like Nicolas Cage being in a movie and laughing. I'm going to capture it. I'm going to capture Gene Hackman yelling.
Because you clearly haven't got the message. This is my town.
Like, with a lesser actor, that's too much. And that yelling doesn't work, and that's angry acting. But he does it so well. He just does it so well.
And it fits. It fits the context of the scene.
And that one's great because that's that long monologue you were talking about where and he starts it off. It was the clip I played at the beginning of the episode. He starts it off very calm in that, whole I'm confused where you people are getting all this money, and it ramps up. And by the end of it, he's just yelling. And I mean, I was like, take the money. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, sir. Here, just take this and don't hurt me. Like,
forgive me, please.
yes. But yeah, this is a great. I'm glad you watched this. I'm really glad that we talked about this and that you got a chance to see this movie, because I really feel like this is an underrated, underseen movie. Like, not enough people remember The Quick and the Dead, and it's unfortunate because it's a fun little yarn of a movie that just, you can just kind of sit back, park your brain, and enjoy the Sam Raimi-ness of it all. He uses a diopter a couple times, which is a lens that has two focal lengths. So those shots where you would have somebody in the foreground in focus and somebody in the background in focus, that's a dioptic lens.
Okay.
And I love seeing those. You don't see them as much anymore, but it's a very stylistic choice, because at first your brain doesn't quite process what's going on. And usually there's a line in the middle, kind of straight down the frame, that's out of focus. So it looks a little funky, but I love shots like that. And like, he uses that. And then I mentioned his push-ins and like Dutch tilts and all that kind of stuff that he does, or he'll do like a low-angled shot that will push in and tilt at the same time, and it gives you this disoriented feeling. But then he did that with a push-pull, like that Jaws shot, where the background, it's the push the camera in while you're zooming out, and so the background moves as well. But he did that with a Dutch angle, with a tilt on it too, a couple times towards the end of the movie when everything's blowing up. That was just like, that's just cool. Like, it's so weird, and it feels so off, but it feels so Sam Raimi. And like, for some reason, he can do that and it not feel dumb. It should. Like, there's no reason a shot like that should work. It should feel almost amateurish, but it doesn't.
It's kind of like Spike Lee and the I forget what that he does that shot on wheels where like your subject is coming forward and the background is moving in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's kind of a weird shot, but like, you almost feel like, oh, it's not a Spike Lee movie if you don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't see that shot in the movie.
Yeah. Certain directors just have those signatures, right? Like, you don't feel like you're watching a Steven Spielberg movie if there isn't a shot of some people looking past the camera at something.
Yeah.
Or J.J. Abrams and his lens flares. And it's Raimi and these weird dolly shots and like odd angles to do stuff at, which is what I loved about him bringing that into the MCU and Multiverse of Madness. There's moments in Multiverse of Madness that has that horror feel to it that just works. It's that Raimi style of horror that he did in Evil Dead and Army of Darkness, and Darkman is another great example of it.
I think I've ever watched Darkman.
Boy, so it is like, it's one of the better examples of 90s comic book films is Darkman. It's way out there. It's crazy, but it's very Sam Raimi and it fits. It's R-rated, it's dark. The subject matter is pretty crazy, but like, it's good. I really like it. And it's Liam Neeson. So Sam Raimi and Liam Neeson doing Darkman. The first one, the sequels are okay. They kind of start to run into the ground a little bit. I think they made 3 or 4 of them. But the first movie's really good. So definitely recommend that. But oh man, it's been great having you back on. We're not going another 2 years. We're going to do this again sooner than that.
Sounds good. Good. I'm always game to talk about movies.
Awesome.
A lot of my meetings at work devolve into conversations about movies. I have a coworker who's a movie fan, and we're always talking about, something to go see, or I think she is a budding director. So, or writer. I think writing is more her passion, but
very cool. Well, definitely anytime we'll get you back on here soon. But you still have your show Joystick and Mouse going on, right?
Yes. It's just Don and I now. Alex had to step away, but we shoot every other week.
Okay.
So we're actually recording tomorrow.
Excellent.
And
and it's good
check
stuff.
us out.
It's great video game news, and you and Don are awesome. I've really liked getting to know you guys over the last few years, and I miss having Alex on the show. But I understand why, and
yeah.
It is what it is.
One of these days, we're gonna draw him back into something new.
Definitely. You got to, because the three of you had a great chemistry with Joystick and Mouse. It was always a good. Yeah. The conversations were always great. So getting the three of you back doing a show together will be great. But yeah, thank you so much for being here this week. This was super fun.
Thanks for having me, man, and thanks for suggesting this movie, because I would have probably not found it. But now I'm also going to add Unforgiven and Tombstone to my list of things. I'll let you know what I think.
Excellent. I can't wait to hear about that. This show I record live on Sunday nights. If you ever want to come and hang out in the chat, twitch.tv/tvstravis. You can do that. The show comes out on Wednesdays, wherever you get your podcasts, or you can go to tvstravis.com to find, the way to subscribe in your favorite podcatcher. You can also find on that site ways to support the show, whether it's Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/tvstravis, or you can go to Patreon now, patreon.com/WYHS. You can support this show for as little as $1 an episode. And you get episodes a little bit earlier, and there's some exclusive content that's only on Patreon. So definitely check that out, tvstravis.com. Next week, I have Sean Allred from Cheap Seat Reviews coming on, and we are going to talk about, it's a newer movie, and now for some reason my brain doesn't want to remember what it was. Oh, Shazam. I'm going to finally watch Shazam. I haven't seen it yet.
It's a good movie.
So I'm looking forward to it. I've heard good things about it, and so that's what we're doing next week.
It's a different take on a superhero movie. It's a little different than what I was expecting, but I very much enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. So that's next week with Sean Allred from the Cheap Seat Reviews. He's coming back on, and we're going to talk about that. So that's what's coming up. So thank you for being here this week. Thank you for listening this week, everybody out there. And remember that, enjoy your movies. There's a whole lot of great stuff to watch right now. And also, be excellent to each other. This has been Wait You Haven't Seen.
Looks like you're having a pretty good time playing with yourself.
Oh, Sharon. It's good stuff. Thank you again. This was super fun.
No problem. Have you watched The Harder They Fall?
I have not.
It's a Western that's on Netflix that has Regina King and Idris Elba and Jonathan Majors. It's in the same. If you ever saw Posse, that Western, I mean, it's like a black Western, much better than Posse was. But it's really good.
You had me with
Delroy Lindo is in it.
Zazie Beetz. I mean, you had me. Yeah. Honestly, you had me at Regina King, and then you said Idris Elba, and I'm like, all right. And then Jonathan Majors, and I will watch Jonathan Majors in anything. Like,
he's great.
I see a trailer and his face pop up, and I'm like, well, I'm going to see that movie. I don't even care what it is at this point.
The first time I saw him was in The Last Black Man in San Francisco. I went up to Alamo and I watched one of it. Like, they were doing like the little film. They have a film club. They were doing a film club viewing of it. And I was like, oh, this guy's really good. And then I watched Lovecraft Country.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, all right, he's got it. And his star is just going through the roof.
Him as He Who Remains in Loki, and then seeing there's the movie where he's playing the Korea War era fighter pilot, Creed 3,
which like he got into amazing shape.
Yeah, he was already in good shape, and then I saw him in that, and I was like, how did he get in better shape? How is that possible?
Right. Yeah.
It's not fair. Oh, Damon Wayans Jr. is in.
Yeah.
Is in that Harder They Fall? I've heard of this one. I just haven't watched it. I need to sit down and watch this.
So,
Lakeith Stanfield,
the guy that directed it, his brother is somebody else
James Samuel. Also, the great spelling of James. Jeymes. See full bio. Who is...
His brother is somebody. His brother, and it was somebody that I wasn't expecting.
Seal.
Who is it?
Seal.
Yes. That's it. I was like, really? I didn't see that coming. Like, I never knew he had a brother that was like artistic.
Looking at the IMDb photo of James Samuel, I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Very cool. The Harder I saw like ads for The Harder They Fall, and I just sort of wasn't that I didn't give it any mind. It's that thing where it's just finding the free time to watch anything anymore. I'm doing too much stuff, but this is going high on my list.
Yeah, this movie is like, for a person who doesn't like Westerns, like I went in and was like, okay, I'm going to watch this because so many people that I like are in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, this is good. It's a good story. Like, you'll like it.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that.
Great soundtrack too.
Oh, good. I always love a good soundtrack. Oh, it's got Eddie. Eddie, I never pronounce it. Gathegi, I think. Plays Bill Pickett in it. I love him. He was in X-Men First Class. He was Darwin.
Oh, yes.
I've seen him in a couple other things, and he is awesome.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. You'll love him in this movie. He's one of the hearts of this movie. Like, you'll really like his character.
There's certain people you see, and the charisma is just there immediately. Like, you just know they're going to bring something all the time. And it's like him. Lakeith Stanfield is another one that I didn't really know much of, and then I see him in something, I'm like, how is this guy not in everything?
If you like Lakeith, watch Judas and the Black Messiah.
Okay.
It's the Huey Newton.
Okay.
Story. He's amazing in that movie.
Check that out.
And what I didn't know is that, like, it's kind of based on a true story. Like,
really?
Nat Love and of course Bass Reeves are real people. I'm not sure if everybody in this. Well, no. Looking at the Wikipedia page, yeah, all these people existed.
Okay.
Bass Reeves was the first black U.S. Marshal.
Ah. You know a movie's good when you have to scroll a ways down to find names like Idris Elba and Delroy Lindo. When you're scrolling a ways down to find that, it's like, all right, we got something cooking here.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's you'll like it.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to call that a night because I am tired and I do have work in the morning. Otherwise, I could stay up all night talking movies with you. Like,
are you going into the office, or are you still working from home?
I'm still working from home. My position got permanent work from home. We don't even have an office in this state anymore in my company.
That's nice.
They closed, so they sold half the company off a couple years ago. And in that transition, the office that I worked in, most of those people were going to be part of the group that left. So they just took whoever was left from Assure and made us remote workers. Which, I'm fine with that. I don't mind getting to stay at home. I just wish that the company...
Is that insurance?
No, it's now it's like mostly payroll and timekeeping.
Okay.
But I wish they treated the remote employees a little bit better, but that's a different discussion for
a whole different. That's yeah, I get it.
But yeah, so that is nice. Like, I have to work. Stupidly, they got rid of day after Thanksgiving as a company holiday because we're a payroll company. It's like, yeah, but all of the payroll companies, all of the people that are our clients aren't open on Friday anyway. So that doesn't matter. But we don't have that as a holiday. And this year it is, it happens to fall that I've got to work because no one else is around. So basically it's like me and one other guy, in my team that are going to be working all day, but there's going to be nothing to do. So it's like, whatever. I get to sit in my home
I'm
office. So
I'm taking off because I'm going up to Massachusetts. My aunt's having a retirement party the day after Thanksgiving.
oh, nice.
But normally I don't take the day because we don't work the whole day. Like, even though we don't get the day off, like the government always sends us home early because they're not there either.
Right.
So, and there's like never anything to do. So it's like, yeah, why waste PTO on it? But you know, this
well,
time
I was
be traveling.
gonna do it because it's actually my birthday falls that day this year.
Oh,
it's always
okay.
right around Thanksgiving, but it just so happened that like we have one team member who puts in for the whole week of Thanksgiving off. Like it's the only thing she takes off all year, is basically that.
Right. So can't tell her no.
So I'm like, I'm not gonna take that away from her. It's like she takes that week off, and then if BTS has something big going on, she'll take time off for that. That's it. That's all she does. And so it was like her and one other person, and we just had somebody leave. So my supervisor was like, I can't give you Friday off. I'm like, nah, don't worry about it. So I gotta get up and walk 10 feet to my home office and sit in there for the day. Big deal. But I'm taking the whole week after.
Yeah.
So
okay.
There'll be extra streaming going on that week.
Hey, I know you're streaming Arkham City. Have you played Gotham Knights yet?
No, I haven't. I have not.
I'm trying to find somebody that played it before I take the plunge and buy it. I've heard mixed.
That's my worry is the mixed reviews that I've been hearing. It's like, maybe I just wait until it drops a little bit in price and get it.
It's on sale for $40 on Xbox Live.
Is it the same? It's not the same developers of the Arkham series, though, is it? I don't remember now.
I think the Arkham game started with Rocksteady.
It was Rocksteady,
and then switched over to WB Games.
Yeah,
I think this game is WB, but I'm
WB
not
Montreal.
sure if they didn't. It's WB Montreal.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I think it's the same people. Oh, yeah, they did Arkham City. But they also did Arkham Origins. So, you can go either way with that because Origins is terrible.
Origins was the weakest for sure. So I played a little bit of Origins.
No. They did the Wii U version of Arkham City. So it is not. They are just the ones that they only did Arkham Origins. Okay, that doesn't. Yeah. And they did the DLC for Arkham Knight.
Okay.
Because Arkham Knight was done by.
That went back to
Rocksteady.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was WB, but it was done by Rocksteady. So yeah, I don't know. I was really looking forward to Gotham Knights, but
it
cool. Sounds like they might have dropped the ball.
It has a standalone single player campaign, right? It's not only multiplayer. Okay. Well, at least that's good.
These reviews that it's getting is subpar.
Yeah, I might have to wait and see if it pops up on Game Pass.
Yeah, I need it to be. Maybe it needs to be a $25 game.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah,
because I love the concept.
Love all things Batman.
Yeah, and I love the idea of like let's make a game, but we'll focus on, the rest of the Bat family. Oh, before I go, if you, I don't know if you ever get onto TikTok at all, but there is
I do from time to time.
There's a guy on there, the Panda Red, and I think it's Red with 2 Ds, but he is a huge comic book guy.
Okay.
And specifically loves to do Batman stuff. And so he'll post a lot of stuff that's like his thoughts on things and this and that, but he'll also do these skits and sketches where he plays all the different characters, and he'll do like the different members of the Bat family.
Oh.
And they're hilarious. They're so
Panda
good.
Red.
Yep.
I have found him and I am now following him.
Check out, he's got a playlist that is all his sketches centered around the Bat family and the character of Lord Deathman. And
okay.
Lord Deathman is a character, he's a yoga master from Japan whose superpower is he can't die. And he came to the States to become Batman's arch nemesis. And watch those. You'll love them. They're great. But what I love too is all of his sketches. He'll have, all the different versions of Robin and stuff. But every time it's Damian Wayne, he always shoots everything from here up. So it's Damian Wayne being the short little guy, and it just cracks me up every single time.
You know, there are those people that think Damian Wayne is the best Robin. I don't understand them, but
I don't either. But I'm also like way behind. I forget about characters like Duke Thomas and those too.
oh, I love Duke. I love Duke. I like the new guy that they have playing the new Batman. The I can't remember his name, black guy that they're using like in the I Am Batman. Because John Ridley, I don't know if you're familiar with that name, but he's done a bunch of movies. John Ridley did not 12 Years a Slave. No, actually, no, he did do 12. I think he did do 12 Years a Slave.
Okay.
But he's been writing a bunch of Batman.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he did 12 Years a Slave, Needle in a Time Stack.
I've been watching.
Yeah, he's been doing the next Batman. And he's also writing Black Panther now.
Oh, nice. That's another one I got to go watch is Wakanda Forever.
Oh, dude, take your tissue with you. They're going to get you.
That's what I hear.
It's going to get you.
That's probably going to be the other thing I do that week after Thanksgiving when I've got that off is some extra streaming time and get out and see some movies.
It's so good. It's so good. I want to go see it again because I had to sit closer to the screen than I would have liked. So I want to sit back and like get more of it in. But yeah, Great movie. They did a great job. So
excellent. All right, man.
All right, I'm gonna let you get to bed, man.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Let's do this again.
No problem.
All right. Have a good one.
Sounds good. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, good long one. Hey, look, you have a good conversation going, you just keep it going, right? Anyway, thank you, Ace, for being here. And whoever else was hanging out in there. I think Amy was in there, maybe poking around a little bit. I see some folks in there. Thank you for hanging out and listening to us ramble about movies for an hour and a half. It was a long one. Couldn't help it. It's good stuff. Anyway, gonna be back tomorrow night for Those Were the Days. And then Tuesday night for Let's Watch Highlander. So be ready for that. Until then, thanks for hanging out, folks. Be good, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay? Bye.